Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positivity here on the show, always about the positive vibes. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He has worked for numerous promotions across America. I'm talking about WWE, Ring of Honor, ECW, the Independents, and so many others. Pleased to welcome the one, the only, Tony Devito. Welcome, Tony, to Wrestling with Heart.
Hey, how you doing, man? Good to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming on. It's my pleasure.
Problem.
So let's talk about your childhood and upbringing. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little town in upstate New York, about 60, 70 miles north of New York City, Rock Tavern. So close to the city of Newburgh and town of Poughkeepsie. So that's where I'm from.
All right, so little town, small town.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were things to do around there that you enjoyed doing. Not as big as the big cities, but you know.
No, plenty of stuff to do, man. As a kid, though, riding bikes, playing in the woods, playing in the creeks, that type of stuff.
All right, being a little adventurous. Was wrestling something you grew up watching as a kid?
I discovered wrestling about 12 years old, somewhere around sixth grade, and a buddy of mine brought a magazine in, and Jimmy Snuka was on the cover, and his hair was crazy, and his eyes were bulging out of his head, and then flipping through the channels, I found it on TV, and that was it, man. It hooked me.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, who are some of your favorites to watch growing up?
Oh, back then, I mean, I had WWF, so it was Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff, Roddy Piper, all those guys from the '80s, right around there. Don Morocco, Randy Savage, all the great WWF stuff back then.
And it was really a hot time too, like that whole '80s rock and wrestling era. Really,
That was great.
yeah, and it was really pop culture at its peak with all the stuff with Cyndi Lauper and
Oh
Lou
yeah.
Albano and just the stuff with the MTV connections. So that was a really amazing time in the business.
Yeah, and to see it all starting at that point was really cool, to see it all come together, go into the mainstream. That was really cool.
Definitely was. What was it about Hogan and Morocco and all the guys you mentioned that just made you go, man, I really want to do this for a living?
It was just the wrestling itself. It's not even that it's the guys. It was just the wrestling. I just fell in love with what it was and what they were doing, and it just drew me to it. But of course, larger than life, characters and things like that, of course, too. But just the whole aspect of the wrestling itself is what drew me to it.
Definitely the style of wrestling back then was, very unique because it had something for everyone and it had storylines that were captivating.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It was all about the storylines, because the guys back then didn't work the same way these guys do today, of course. And it's kind of flip-flop. Like there's no storyline and it's all wrestling. So, well, flips and pretty moves.
What was like your favorite storyline of all time?
One of my favorites, I think, was I remember when the Young Stallions, Roma and Jim Powers, when they broke up and Roma turned on him. It was a really cool story, and it's not even a big one in the history of everything, But for me, it was cool because like Paul Roma later on became one of my trainers. But I loved it back then because I liked those guys. Like even though they were like baby faces, I'm more of a I like the heels, but they were baby faces. It was cool to see them like get their shot, and then they actually got a storyline. But I would say probably the best one is when Shawn Michaels threw Marty Jannetty through the plate glass window in the barbershop. That's probably the best angle that I've ever seen.
And it's definitely one that a lot of fans still talk about to this
It's great.
day. one of the best heel turns, in my opinion,
Yeah,
ever done, and it really set Shawn Michaels up for superstardom.
it really
Uh,
did. Yeah.
so, all right, so the 80s and early 90s was a huge period of time for the WWE, WWF back then. What can you tell me about your first experiences attending wrestling school, training? Tell me about your first time attending wrestling school.
Well, so I trained with Dr. David Schultz. So just kind of meeting him and seeing him in person, he's like the first guy I ever like got to speak to that way, the first wrestler. So, and he was a big man, and he had a really he's a badass reputation there too. So,
Hmm. Oh yeah.
just meeting him and it was crazy. But then getting in the ring for the first time, and I trained in a really tiny ring. It was like a 14 by 14. The thing was hard as a rock. But that's where I trained in Orange, Connecticut. So that's where Tony Altamore and had his school. So Paul Roma trained there, Mario Mussini trained there. Just a bunch of dudes came through that school, and a lot of guys from back in that day would go train there because it was pretty localized to Stamford, Connecticut. So a lot of guys would go use that ring, and they would train in that gym there. It was Quest Passarillo's gym, and it was pretty cool. Like pretty cool experience. But I remember that ring was hard as a rock, man. It hurt.
The ring sizes, were they similar, different to the rings that WWE was using or the other companies were using at the
No.
time?
Well, yeah, so it's funny too, and I just recently learned this. So there's a little skit where Hillbilly Jim joined up with Hogan, and you remember they used to. I don't know how old you are, but back then they did a whole thing where Hillbilly joined up with Hogan, and Hogan was training them, and they actually shot a lot of that stuff at the school I trained at, which I had no clue
Oh
until
wow.
yeah, until about a month ago, and Mario Mancini posted it, and I was like, "Holy cow, that's our school! I didn't know that."
That's so
But
cool.
yeah, because of course, when it originally aired, that was way before I went to school, so I never put it together. But anyway, no, the WWF rings are 20 by 20. This was a 14 by 14. It did have real rope like a WWF ring, but nothing else compared. Nothing.
Well, when you start training, you're learning the basics, the fundamentals. What can you tell me about those first few days, learning from your trainers? Any pieces of advice that you got from them that still stick with you today?
The biggest things that Schultz trained us on was like protecting yourself in the ring. When you tie up, make sure you put your hand in front of your face so somebody doesn't go to headbutt you in the nose or something, or somebody hits you in the face, or it was all like little things just to take care of yourself in the ring. But back when he was in the business, it was different. Guys did try to do that things. For me, no one ever tried to take advantage like that. So but it was cool to know that stuff. But because I wanted to be a pro wrestler, I got into amateur wrestling in high school, in junior high school, and I was pretty well versed already in shoot style wrestling from that. So I kind of always was able to protect myself anyway. So I didn't really worry about that type of stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely some similarities between the two. Amateur wrestling definitely helps prepare you for being conditioned and knowing those basic techniques that you apply later on if you decide to pursue pro wrestling. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I did it because I said, well, man, if I'm going to be a wrestler, I'm going to get into high school wrestling. So that's what I did, and it definitely did prepare you because there's a lot of things you can use that coincide with one another, and just being able to protect yourself like that, like I said, because just in case something happens, a fan or another wrestler, anything can happen in there. So it's nice to be able to protect yourself like that too. But yeah, they do go hand in hand, and that's the reason why I did it.
So you put the fundamentals together, you start training, you make your debut. Was it tough to get through, or were you excited?
And
What
I
what
was real excited, man. And that day I met so many people. Like my very first match, I met Joey Styles, I met Tommy Dreamer, I met Taz, Hercules Hernandez, Paul Roma was there, of course. He helped train me. Man, I forget who else. Mario Mancini was there. It was a pretty big show. It was for the NAWA. This guy Tony Capone was running it. Mount Vernon High School. So and I wrestled Mario Mancini and I blew my knee out in the very first match.
Wow, that is just
Yeah,
That's terrible.
I had a prior knee injury though. I used to race motocross when I was a kid, and I heard it back then and never got it fixed. And then Mario just pushed down on my knee, and it just boom, it went right out. So right in the first match. But no anxiety because we were having so much fun, and it's what what I wanted to do. So I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're having fun and you love what you do, I mean, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it sure is.
So, but having a knee injury, it's not fun, in the beginning of your career because you put your hard work into this, and so you make your comeback, you recoup. What can you tell me about your time in the WWE? Working the likes of Doink the Clown, Fantasio, Bam Bam Bigelow, and so many others.
Yeah.
What was it like working there at that time?
Yeah, Fantasio. I got his only TV match, so it's famous for that. It was really cool, like those guys were giants too when I got there, It was like a circus, man. Everybody was huge. Everybody had these costumes on. It was surreal back then, But it's what I wanted to do. So, I went in without anything holding me back, I just went right in and went full on with it, man. I learned a lot there. Guys helped me out there, and it's an experience that I never take back. Doing TV matches right off the. I mean, I started doing TV. It was probably my third match. I was doing TV already. But that's kind of how it worked back then, especially in the earlier '80s too. Guys would come right in. They went right to TV. But but it was cool because I learned a lot there, a lot.
Who are some guys that you got to study up from during your time in the WWE when you arrived there?
Well, the first guy that ever helped me was Skinner, Steve Kern. He's the first guy ever sat me down and told me some stuff. But later on, when I was there for a while, I started getting friendly with the guys, and then Scott Hall came into the territory, and me and Mike Bell and Justin Credible, PJ, we all just started making friends with those guys, and then the click thing happened, and then we hung out with everybody like Shawn Michaels and X Pac, and those guys all kind of like helped us out and took us, like Scott though took us totally under his wing. Scott would sit us down and talk to us and tell us, "Hey, you guys did this good, or you did this wrong, or you should do this, or you should do that." And he really, really took an interest in helping us, which was really awesome. And I've always appreciated that. And he'd always told me, he goes, "One day you'll do the same thing for somebody," and that's how it was back then. You did things like that because you wanted to do it for someone else later on. So
Scott Hall is a talent that's still missed to this day.
yeah, he's
So
great.
so
He was
sad.
great.
What a tremendous loss for the business. Any funny stories you care to share about interacting with Scott Hall during your time there?
I mean, nothing really that could be talked about on this stuff. I mean, my first ever shot of Jack Daniels, he bought me, and I sat at the bar and I looked at this. I'm not much of a drinker. I'm not at all anymore, but I wasn't back then either. So he buys me a shot of Jack, and I was afraid to do it. I'm like 19 or whatever the heck I was back then, and I just was like, oh man, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna do this Jack Daniels. How's it gonna taste? What's it gonna be? And it took me forever. And he's like, yo, just friggin' do it. And I finally took the shot, and it was terrible. It was terrible. And he's laughed. So that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's always fun, when you're around the guys and you're driving from city to city, town to town. It's one of the best things about wrestling that I've heard, read about is the camaraderie that the wrestlers have and the guys have. So it's amazing. It's cool to see that you were able to, still are able to do that. Be around everyone now. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the same as it used to be like that. That used to have the long trips between shows with the boys, and you talked wrestling, and it's really not like that anymore. You go to one show, and then everyone goes a different way to another show, and there's no one riding with each other no more. There's no talks like there used to be. And that's how the whole click thing started. These guys just travel from town to town together, talking wrestling, talking how to make it better, and that's really what got that going for those guys. So that's something that's missed in the business today. Is that part of it?
do you think it's something that should be brought back?
A
The
hundred
whole
percent. Yeah, 100%. But it never will be because there's no I mean, it's there in the WWF still. WWE, it's still like that. These guys are traveling; they're on the road together. It's still like that there, but it's not like that for any other company. AEW is not like that. These guys do one show a week. They all fly into the same town. They all go to the from the airport to the building, and that's it. So it's not the same as it used to be.
And you also wrestled for ECW for a period of time. Tell me about what it was like working there.
ECW was great, man. That was my first like full-time job in wrestling. So that always will hold a special place in my heart. But that was that upstart company, man. They made a big name for themselves. They made a lot of noise. I was real happy to get there and actually, be one of their guys, so that was really cool.
Who have been some of your favorite opponents that you've gotten to work with? Because you've worked a lot of different talent over the years.
I definitely have, man. Like so Raven was the first guy I really enjoyed working with, but he was Johnny Polo back then. So I worked him in a dark match. We were at a house show in a high school for WWF back in the day. And man, just that one match alone, he like taught me things that I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then Shawn Michaels was another guy that did that. But some of my other favorite guys, like Chris Chetty, I had a good time working with Chetty and Nova. I had a good time working with New Jack and Balls and Axel. It just depended what day it was. But you know, I've had a good time working with almost everybody I've been in there with. As long as you can gel and you can do something and make that crowd pop, that's what matters. And some guys you just have more fun with and you click better with. But I have a good time with everybody in there.
The crowd is very essential to a pro wrestling show. They really are because they will let you know if you are doing something right or doing something wrong. They will let you know.
Yeah, they sure will. And I'm very vocal, which helps me out a lot, especially these days. I've 100% slowed down. But my character, the way I am, it still can get me over. I still get heat out there, which is nice. That's another lost art form. Nobody wants to be a heel anymore. Everyone wants to be cheered. Everyone wants to sell their merchandise, and that's cool. I get it. You got to sell your merch. You got to make a living, but it takes away from the whole aspect of what it's supposed to be in there, you know?
To you, what makes a good heel? What makes a good bad guy?
It's just getting that reaction, knowing how to get the reaction, knowing when to do things at the right time. Cheating is one thing that makes a good bad guy. Doing something behind the referee's back, that's good too, and just getting under the skin of the fans. So that's what makes a good bad guy, you know?
Who do you feel is like the ultimate heel in your opinion? Like the ultimate bad guy in wrestling?
I mean, Roddy Piper was fantastic. So, I mean, you got to go with somebody like him right off the bat.
No, you can't. Just amazing promo work,
Yeah.
great character. Let's switch gears and talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of wrestling. I know you've been involved with different charity organizations or have done stuff outside of the business as far as helping other people. What kinds of things can you talk about that you'd like to share with me as far as helping out in your community is concerned?
I mean, I don't know. I don't do a ton. It's not like I do a ton of stuff, I am a mailman these days, so I do take care of some elderly people. I help people out like that. Um, I love doing I do things with the community for motorcycle stuff. We do fundraisers for communities, raise money, toy donations, things like that. So that's cool. That's about it. Not much other stuff. I'm not. I mostly work and stay home. That's mostly what I do.
Well, let's talk more about the motorcycle fundraisers. What made you decide to get involved with that?
I've always been a biker, man. Like I mentioned motocross earlier, and then my father was always into it too. And my father went into the got into the biking thing with that, and he got into the Harley groups and started doing Rolling Thunder, which is for the veterans. And I always support the veterans, so I always do rides for veterans and things like that. And I did it with him a lot back in the day.
It's always nice to have like a father son outing, get to raise money for a good cause. Was
Yeah.
there a particular event that just was so heartwarming, whether it was a fundraiser or doing something special for a fan at a wrestling event? Was there any kind of something just was that touched your
Well,
heart?
I mean, for me, it was when Trent Acid passed away, and I went and did a show for him at the ECW arena after he passed, and we helped raise money for the family. And I mean, I've done that for for many other people. Chris Candido, when he passed, I did his memorial show with Frank Goodman, and just things like that. We did a show down here in Florida not too long ago. One of the fans passed away, and then we did a show for him, and then the next day we actually did like a autograph fundraiser for him, and all the money kind of went towards for him and his girl and all that. So it was kind of good for that.
What is it about giving back to the community that gives you the most joy?
I think just being respected in your community, being able to people know you're a good person for that. That's about it. I don't look for, recognition.
Yeah, you'd mentioned earlier you've been a mailman for a while. Well,
I
what
sure
made you
have.
decide to pursue that career?
I moved to Florida and I had nothing. So I just was looking around and I said, well, let me put an application for the post office. And that's what I did. And that was it, man. I got hired there and I've been there ever since. So I actually really enjoy that job.
Well, what's your favorite part about being a mailman?
I just love going out talking to everybody. I'm a natural heel, but out there they love me. So I guess the baby face comes out in me when I'm working.
Well, Tony, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers. I want to say thank you for coming on the show.
No problem,
Where
man.
can people find out more about you, how they can get in touch with you? Where can people find more about what's going on?
I work for a company down here in Florida. It's called Atomic Legacy Wrestling, ALW. Right now, I'm current tag team champions with CJ O'Doyle. We call ourselves the Bald Line right now, which is kind of a playoff of the Bloodline, of course. We thought it was a joke, and it kind of just stuck. So we're the Bald Line. But that's who I work for. I don't really work for any other shows at this moment. I'm getting old, and I enjoy working for that group. So that's basically the only group I work for down here. Um, you know, I, I have Instagram. People could follow that.
Thanks so much. You're more than welcome to
No
come
problem,
back.
man. Sounds great, brother. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Take care.
All right.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.